Sweet deal, man. Let us now move on to this weekend's pay-per-view, UFC 284, Makhachev versus Volkanovski. So this Saturday, February 12th, is going down at the RAC Arena in Perth, Australia. The main event being a historic title fight between Islam Makhachev defending his UFC lightweight belt against the man moving up from featherweight, Alexander the Great Volkanovski. Volkanovski chasing greatness, Islam having just won the belt, looking for his first title defense. My goodness, both of these men are examples that you would want to show any up-and-coming MMA fighter. Both men fight kind of flawlessly almost every time out. We're going to get to that main event and a few other fights on this card. But before we get to those, boys, any other fights or fighters that you guys want to highlight for our viewers?
I'll highlight two real quick, and then I'll let Mark do a couple if he's got more. The first one I have is the first fight on the card, the Zubaira Tukhugov. Someone do it.
Tukhugov.
Thank you. Versus Elves Brenner. I like Zubaira. I like watching him fight. I think he's a solid fighter. Comes out of that Magomedov camp. I think he's a good one to watch. I think it'll be a fun fight. I don't know anything about Elvis Brenner, but Zubaira is a fun one to watch. Next one on my list is just Luma Lukbunmi. She's always a fun fight to watch, always exciting, very good Muay Thai. She's fighting Elise Reed, who's actually also a very solid fighter in and of herself. But I think Lukbunmi, takes this one, and I think she does it in a nice, fun fashion. So those are my two.
Okay.
Yeah, agree on Loma. I could see her putting on a show. Tukhugov is actually moving up to lightweight for this fight. He was always a solid featherweight, but he has had some issues with weight, so he is moving up. We'll see if he looks any different up a weight class. He never felt like the biggest featherweight, so we'll see how this goes for him. And yeah, the other one that I will call out is Jamie Malarkey versus Francisco Prado. Prado is young kid. I think I remember seeing he was only like 20 even, or 22. I think he was 20. Knockout artist, and obviously we know Jamie Malarkey can take some shots and will dig deep and see what you have in the tank. So that one could be a scrap and a fight to watch, especially with the hometown crowd behind Malarkey.
That's it?
That's it, yeah, we can hop in.
Okay, the first fight that we are going to check out in the prelims on ESPN and ESPN Plus in the featherweight division, Joshua Culibao taking on Melsik Baghdasaryan. There you go. Baghdasaryan. That's a long one. Culibao from Australia, of course. He is 10-1 as a pro with one draw, coming off back-to-back wins in the UFC. Both of them decisions. Baghdasaryan, the gun. He's 7-1 as a pro, 31-year-old out of the U.S., out of Glendale, California. He's on quite the win streak. He's on a 7-fight win streak right now, and he is perfect thus far in his 2 fights in the UFC following his fight on the Contender Series, most recently coming off of a UD over Bruno Souza. Omar, give us your take and your pick for this fight. I can't.
Omar, you're muted, bud.
Now I can't hear you. And you are muted, actually.
Now I am muted. Fucking chooch. I like Baghdasaryan here. I think that he's got a lot of good skills, a lot of good striking here. I think we've seen Culibao not necessarily put on a performance that makes me think that he'd be able to stop Baghdasaryan.
Mm-hmm.
Baghdasaryan?
Yeah.
Baghdasaryan. And so for that reason, I'm going to go Baghdasaryan by round 2 KO.
Mark?
So this one's a dead pick'em. Both guys are minus 110 on the odds. There is a 1-inch height and 3-inch reach advantage for Culibao, which could be a factor. They've both looked very good to me. I'm having a hard time calling this one. Melsik hasn't fought in 15 months, which kind of makes this even more difficult. I wish I saw him in action a little more recently. But Culibao has looked good. He started his UFC career 0-1-1, but has looked really sharp, I thought, in his last two performances. He's a well-rounded dude. He's dangerous. I could see if he kind of goes more so to the grappling, maybe he could make this more interesting, but I just am getting the vibe that Melsik may be a little bit too composed and crisp in the striking for Culibao. So I could see it go the other way, but I'm going to lean toward Melsik winning a decision here based on the striking.
Yeah, out of his 7 wins, 5 of them have come by way of knockout or TKO. I'm also leaning towards Melsik just for the power edge here. I've been impressed by his striking thus far, so I'm going to go with him round 1 knockout.
Boom.
Okay, moving on to the light heavyweight division. Tyson Pedro taking on Modestas Bukauskas. Pedro 9-3 out of Australia, coming off back-to-back wins over Harry Hunsucker and Isaac Villanueva. Modestas Bukauskas, the Baltic Gladiator, the 28-year-old out of Lithuania. He's 13-5 as a pro, also coming off back-to-back wins, most recently over Chuck Campbell. Mark, give us your take of this fight in the light heavyweight division and your pick.
Okay, so Pedro is a minus 250 favorite here. Bukauskas is plus 200. I actually thought it might even be wider than that, so they are giving some respect to Bukauskas, which I guess is fair. They just absolutely refuse to move Pedro up the line here. I know Bukauskas is a late replacement in this fight. I forget who he replaced, but it wasn't anyone great either. I don't know why we're like so slow rolling Tyson Pedro. Bukauskas, from what I read, has looked good in his couple of wins since he got cut from the UFC, but I don't think this one's going to go well for him. Tyson Pedro is good. Like, let's just call it what it is. He is good, and he is real, and it's becoming more and more obvious every fight. He's not going to lose to Modestas Bukauskas, and frankly, I think he's going to hurt him. I mean, think about what Khalil did to Bukauskas' knee, and then think about the leg kicks that Tyson Pedro throws. Doesn't seem great. Nope. So give me Tyson Pedro, round 1, knockout.
Yes, sir. For the record, it was Minyang Zhang that was paired up with Tyson Pedro first.
Yeah.
So like Mark was saying,
yeah,
still not great. I'd agree, man. Tyson Pedro's a beast. I've always been Team Pedro here. We've had a lot of time off in between his last 2 losses and his most recent 2 wins, and he's looked goddamn fantastic. I don't know why they're slow rolling him. I don't know if there's a specific reason or if this is just choice. But either way, I do love watching this man perform. So I'm not going to be super mad at it, but I do wish they would give him somebody with some consequence. So we can. He's lost a lot of time, and
yeah,
you're not going to get that back. And I don't see after this win, especially at this point, how you don't give him somebody of consequence going forward. So let's go Tyson Pedro, round 1 KO.
Well, boys, we are once again unanimous in our picks. I totally agree. You guys took the words out of my mouth. I think Tyson Pedro is for real. Out of his 9 wins, all of them have come by finish. I think the guy's a stud, and sure, why not? I'll roll with it. You both said round 1 knockout. That's what I was thinking as well. So let's go Tyson Pedro, round 1
Boy, we're jinxing the fuck out of this guy with that.
I'll tell you what,
round
though.
1 knockout pick.
Tyson Pedro at least had the decency to lose to Shogun Rua. He didn't do anything fucking crazy and kill him on his retirement fight or anything.
You look back at who this guy, like, he's fought Khalil, he's fought Paul Craig, he's fought OSP, right? He's fought Shogun.
He killed Paul Craig.
Yeah,
he murdered
Paul Craig. He's been in there with dudes. It's not like he's some raw guy. Like, I get it, he was hurt for a bit, but like, all right, let's get him back in there with fucking people.
And he's got his losses, but his performances when it comes to his wins are nothing short of what Ronda Rousey, I feel like, used to do. He goes in there and he fucking murks people. I don't think he's... Bro, in fights that he's won, he's never been out of the first round. He murders people left and right.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's go Tyson Pedro.
Let's go. Okay. I think we are sticking with the light heavyweight division here. Jimmy Crute taking on Alonzo Menifield. So
Name card opener.
Yeah,
This is such a good fucking fight.
Jimmy Crute, the Brute, 26 years old, out of Australia, 12-3 as a pro. Only 3 of those wins making the distance, so 5 knockouts, add 4 subs to that. He is looking to get back into the win column with back-to-back losses against Anthony Smith and Jamal Hill back in December of 2021. He's had a bit of a layoff. Alonzo Menifield will be standing across from him, the 35-year-old out of Dallas, Texas, 13-3 as a professional, 10 knockouts of those 13 wins. He is coming off back-to-back wins, so looking to really extend that into a streak, most recently defeating Misha Serkinov back in October. Mark, start us off here. Give us your thoughts and a pick.
All right, so Crute is actually almost 2-1 here. He's a minus 190 favorite. Menifield is plus 155 as the dog, so a little smaller. The size is pretty comparable. Crute is 2 inches taller, but he will have 2 inches less in the reach department.
That's what I thought.
Menifield is a guy who has flashed talent before. He holds a knockout of Paul Craig on his record. He's also had some losses where he's looked pretty shaky. But now, though, he seems to be putting it together. Like, he has looked phenomenal in his last 2 wins. And they were against a bum with a fake record and a clearly washed Misha Serkinov. So maybe that's part of it, but he has truly looked very good. Like he's turning a corner in a way. My concern is that this is kind of a big jump from those opponents. I know it's been over a year since Jimmy Crute fought, but you got to think he's been working on things. He probably wasn't happy with his couple losses. I'm expecting to see a very good Jimmy Crute here. He's another guy who holds a win over Paul Craig. And he did it by out-grappling Paul Craig, which not many people can say. And I think that's the key for him in this one. If the striking isn't going well, he can look to take this to the mat. Whereas I think Alonzo has to kind of come out, find Crute early, and set a pace and turn this into a striking contest. Because if he doesn't, I think he can end up in some tough spots. The counter to that thought is that Menifield is strong as hell. Like, if you look at the guys who have beaten him, it's OSP, Devin Clark, and William Knight. And they're all guys who are strong as hell themselves. So my one pause is Crute actually, like, strong and powerful enough to control Menifield and be able to wrestle with him and not just get kind of shucked off? But I'm leaning toward yes, just because I really rate Jimmy Crute as a grappler. So I think the technique will help. So we've seen Crute finish quickly before by Jamal Hill. That's what made him take this break. It could happen here, but I'm going to say he can hang on the feet. Eventually we'll drag it down, and I think he can finish it there. So I'll say Jimmy Crute, second round sub.
Okay. That take is so funny because now that I'm really looking at Menifield's record, the only guys that have beaten him are guys with thighs bigger than him.
Yeah.
Legit.
I'm telling you.
Like William Knight is out of everybody that he's lost to, William Knight is the biggest man that he has fought. He's the biggest
man I've ever seen.
He's definitely there for sure.
Yeah.
OSP has always been a monster of a human being. And we just spent like 5 minutes talking about Devin Clark's thighs not too long ago. Yeah. So I think as long as his thighs are bigger than the opponent's, I think he wins. Honestly, man, like I have real trouble picking this fight. Jimmy Crute is very, very good. But like you said, man, Alonzo has looked better in his last 2 fights, and more than that, he's looked different. So to me, this is not something that he could have done in his fight prior to that. It looks like something that he's picked up and is incorporated properly into his game, which leads me to believe that this is going to continue, and we won't see the Alonzo Menifield prior to those moments, which are kind of hit or miss, to be honest, especially with his striking and his setups. They weren't really there. If he caught a guy, that was generally where he got, away with the wins and things like that, because his power is significant. And I do think that he will be able to stop a lot of the takedowns as a result of his strength, just pure strength. And if he gets it done within the first round, I don't think he'll really need the gas for the 3. So I'm going to go with Menifield by 1 KO, round 1.
Totally agree with Omar on this one. I'm a big fan of Alonzo Menifield. I'm a believer in his power. I mean, out of his 13 wins, I think 12 of them are finishes. So I think he's going to hurt Crute, and I'll go with Omar here. I'm going to say round 1 knockout. I don't think Crute is going to be able to handle Menifield's power, and Crute can get hit, and Menifield's going to touch him, and it's going to make a big difference. So we will see. Okay, going up to the heavyweights. Justin Tafa, the bad man, taking on Parker Porter, the not-so-good man. Excuse me, I don't mean that he's not so good. I mean, like, he's also bad, but maybe not as bad as Justin Tafa. That was terrible. Can you cut that out? No, leave it in. Fuck it. Justin, bad man Tafa, the 29-year-old out of Australia, 5-3 as a professional, all 5 wins coming by way of knockout. One of those was his most recent fight, a first-round knockout with a devastating head kick against Harry Hunsucker back in 2021. Parker Porter, 37-year-old out of Hartford, Connecticut. 12-7 as a pro, 5 knockouts, 3 subs added to that. Looking to get back in the win column after getting choked out by Jailton Almeida back in May. Omar, why don't you take this one first? Give us your take and your pick of Tafa versus Porter.
So, did we ever find out if Justin and Junior Tafa are the same person? Because I'm starting to think they're the same person.
It's fishy. It's fishy.
It's very fishy here.
It's the same slot on the card. It was literally Junior Tafa's slot. Then his opponent got hurt. They gave him a new opponent. Then he got hurt, and they were like, it's okay. We're going to put in a fight with Justin Tafa in the same slot. It's wild.
Yeah, it's fine.
So it's not, Justin Tafa is not Junior Tafa.
No, it's not.
It is a different person.
Yes.
It's a lot of crazy shit that went on for us to get here, and it's very confusing. It does not help that they're like identical twins or something. They look ridiculously close.
Yeah.
In visual comparison. Anyway, this fight will be a couple of things. This fight will more than likely be violent. This fight will be extremely sloppy. And somebody will be getting knocked out. With all of these things in mind, I'm going with Justin Tafa, round 2, KO.
Mark.
Tafa's the slight favorite. He's minus 130. Parker Porter is plus 105. The resume honestly points to Parker Porter here. He's 3-2 in the UFC, and his losses are Chris Daukaus and Jailton Almeida. So pretty respectable. Justin Tafa is 2-3, and the losses are Jorgen De Castro, Carlos Felipe, Jared Vendera. Like, it doesn't look as good. It feels like it shouldn't be Tafa, but for some reason I feel like it's going to be. He's the same size as Porter. He is quicker than him. He's going to have the hometown crowd, and Porter isn't a finisher. So Tafa's going to have some time to find a kill shot, and that's kind of what he does. So I'm going to say he finds it. Justin Tafa, round 2, knockout.
Everybody who beats Henry Handsucker wins again right after. So I'm going to go with that piece there.
Okay.
Now I'm looking up Harry Hunsucker to see.
We are once again unanimous. I'm also going to be taking Justin Tafa, and I'm going to say he's going to get him out of there in the first round with a 6th win with a 6th knockout.
Dude, Harry Hunsucker must hate Samoans. He came to the UFC, and they were like, here, have Tai Tuivasa, Justin Tafa, and Tyson Pedro consecutively. They just all knocked him out.
Yep. He's had like 3 minutes in the UFC, literally 3 minutes in the octagon, and he's won none of it.
Okay, moving on. Fun one. Very fun one. In the welterweight division, Randy Brown taking on Della Maddalena. So Maddalena, the 26-year-old out of Australia, also out of Perth. 13-2 as a pro. 11 knockouts, 1 submission. Only 1 win went the distance for Mr. Maddalena. He's on quite the win streak. He's undefeated in the UFC so far, 3-0 in the UFC, as well as winning on the Contender Series. Most recent win coming against Danny Roberts, a TKO back in November. Only 2 losses of his career were the first 2 fights of his pro career, so he's been on quite a tear. Let's see, Randy Brown, Rude Boy, the 32-year-old out of Jamaica, 16-4 as a pro, 6 knockouts, 5 subs added to that on a 4-fight win streak. Most recently, decision win over Francisco Trinaldo back in October. He is 10-4 in the UFC. Omar, take this one first. Randy Brown, Della Maddalena, what's your pick?
Bro, this is such a difficult fight to pick. I love both of these guys. I rank both these guys, as far as prospects are concerned, pretty high. I think we've talked about Della Maddalena potentially doing something big this year. Mark, I gotta ask you, what are the odds for this one? I gotta know.
You want to guess, or you want me to tell you?
I would say Maddalena is probably a favorite, but it's got to be close, man. It's got to be like 110, 100, plus 100 for Randy Brown.
Minus 340 for Jack. Plus 260 for Randy Brown. Yeah.
All right, well, that's the craziest fucking thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
That's not even close.
Yeah.
Wow.
I thought it'd be in the hundreds. I thought maybe Jack like minus 160, 70. I didn't see this.
Honestly, dude, I thought it'd be a pick-up, man. I mean, Randy Brown has got a lot of physical attributes that make this a real fucking problem. And not to mention, Randy Brown in general is just a fantastic fighter. I'm not really sure why he's being counted out here. I will grant that Maddalena's game, his pressure and the pace is a bitch. I give you that wholeheartedly. And Randy Brown, I think recently, though, has shown a lot more composure when it comes to the long game, when it comes to the cardio. I don't see it being that definitive of a choice. I think that's a little wild to me. And to be honest, with that in mind, now I'm offended for Randy Brown, and I will be picking Randy Brown to win this by split decision.
All right, the emotional pick.
Wow. Mark.
So, yeah, as I said, Jack minus 340, Randy Brown plus 260. As Omar alluded to, 4 inches of height and 5 inches of reach in the Randy Brown corner, which is so much. And Randy Brown is so talented and should be able to lean on that. And I love Randy Brown, and I've been a believer on his rise, but I am more than sold on Della Maddalena. And I am picking him here to beat Randy Brown and to do it in style. I think Jack is going to be walking Randy Brown down in a way that makes him uncomfortable in the striking. And I don't think Randy Brown's typical striking is thrown with enough power to deter Jack. Obviously, he has power and he can land big shots. But his usual striking is the type that wants to kind of exchange techniques with you and keep range and score points and pick you apart. And Jack, as we've seen, he walks through these type of shots. He's just one of these guys who he seems like as if it's a mental choice. Like he just doesn't care about the shots that are coming at him. And he walks into your space and he throws fucking precise heat. And I don't envision Randy Brown having the game to exchange enough in those moments to keep Jack off him. So I think Jack puts him down. I think he might even do it quickly. So I'm going to pull the trigger. As much as I love Randy Brown, and I could absolutely see Randy Brown win this fight, I'm going to pull the trigger on a round 1 knockout for Jack in an official I have arrived moment.
Like it. Yeah, man. I think Jack Della Maddalena is so legit, and I mean Randy Brown is too, man. But I think Maddalena is going to show that he's on another level in this fight, and I think he's going to get him out of there with yet another outstanding KO TKO. I'll say he gets him out of there late in the first round, and we're all like, "Holy shit, Maddalena, he's ready for the big stage."
Look, I just have to say this because the line is.
You're regretting the pick.
No, I'm not. I'm actually going to double down on Randy Brown real quick because, like, I understand that Jack Della Maddalena has a crazy ass record. I understand that his performances in the UFC have been stellar. Totally understand that. The quality of the resume though is not there for me. It's just not, especially when we're talking about these higher level fights, guys that have the experience, guys that have been in there. Like Randy Brown has lost to Vicente Luque, which gonna happen, frankly. Nico Price, which you can't really blame him for because if you watch that fight, who gets knocked out like that in general? Like no one. It doesn't happen. I consider that one an anomaly, and I'm pretty sure he was winning that fight up until that moment. Not that there was much going on. I think it was the beginning of the second round, but I had him winning that fight up until that moment. And then you have Bilal Muhammad, which at this point, again, probably going to happen. And then his first fight in the UFC, Michael Graves, which I give people passes on their first fight because it's the first fight.
Plus, Michael Graves might have been good. He only got cut from the UFC because of some domestic violence shit.
Oh, damn. Oh, he was in Tough, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, Randy Brown is legit, man. Randy Brown has quality on his resume, especially when it comes to wins as well. Brian Barberena, Wardley Alves, Alex the Cowboy Oliveira, Jared Gooden, Chaos Williams, Francisco Trinaldo. You want to argue about some of those fights, whether he won or he lost, whatever, but he's fought those people. He has the W's on his record. He has the experience. Like, to just count him out with minus 260 is fucking garbage.
Let me ask you this question. What do you think Jack Della Maddalena does to Francisco Trinaldo?
I think he goes the distance with him. I don't think he knocks him out.
Okay.
I do.
Fair then. Fair.
I don't think he knocks him out. I definitely think he goes the distance.
You
Francisco Trinaldo is a beast. I mean, if nothing else, the man is a tank.
I'll ask you another question. Randy Brown struggled with Vicente Luque, who fights a lot like Vicente Luque.
Nah. If I had Vicente Luque in front of Jack Della Maddalena right now, I would pick Vicente Luque all day.
I'm not saying he's as good.
Wow.
I'm saying style.
I would. I mean, I guess to simplify it, sure, but
I'm just poking holes in your little points.
Yeah, but their actual styles and their games, I think, are completely different. Yeah. But like I said, Della Maddalena's look great, and I talked about him when we were doing our picks, our predictions for 2023. Like I love him, but this specific fight, more so the line, more than anything, like don't be counting Randy Brown out. Randy Brown has just as much opportunity to win this fight than he does. So I just remember what is going on here. Don't let the line fool you into thinking this is a done deal because it's fucking not even close.
I love that one of us is on Randy Brown. I love that you took this stance because I love Randy Brown and I think he's very good. And you were right, as we've said, going from Danny Roberts to Randy Brown is quite a jump. Like they skipped a lot of steps with Jack, and I get why because he looks unbelievable. But like it's a big jump, so you never know.
Yeah.
And let's be real, if Maddalena loses, it's not going to be the end for him. You know what I mean? Like he'll be good. I think Randy Brown is on a nice little streak right now, and his performances I think have been pretty legit. We've had a couple of controversial decisions probably here and there, but the fights themselves and his ability to win I think is notable.
For sure.
Round one knockout, baby.
I even gave Maddalena love by saying split decision.
All right.
Okay, co-main event time, gentlemen. In the featherweight division, Yair Rodriguez El Pantera takes on Josh Emmett. What a featherweight fight. My God.
For the interim title. Don't forget that.
Oh, that's right. Oh, man.
You're going to hold on to it until Volk gets back.
Forget it. Okay, you have Yair Rodriguez on one side. He's the 30-year-old out of Parral, Mexico. 14-3 with 1 no contest, 5 knockouts on his record. 3 subs added to that, coming off of a TKO shoulder injury victory over Brian Ortega. Not how anybody wanted that fight to go. It ended late in the first round. Before that, he lost a unanimous decision to Max Holloway. But Yair is one of the most exciting fighters on the entire roster. Don't get it wrong. Josh Emmett, a knockout highlight reel to rival anyone's. The 37-year-old out of Sacramento, California, 18-2 as a pro with 6 knockouts, coming off of a split decision victory over the very dangerous and very talented Calvin Kattar back in June. Mark, let me start with you this time for this co-main. Give us your take and your pick of Yair versus Emmett.
All right, Yair, a small favorite, or decent favorite, minus 165. Josh Emmett plus 135 as the dog. Yair's going to have 5 inches of height on his side, but only 1 inch of reach, though. This is a very weird title fight to me, to be honest. It feels weird because on one hand you have Yair, who in the last 40 months has a record of 1-1 with a loss to Max Holloway and an injury victory over Brian Ortega. Mm-hmm. So to have him in a title fight feels a little strange to me. Obviously, we know his talent. And then on the other side, you have Josh Emmett, who, of course, is on a 5-fight win streak. But, man, is he squeaking by in these last couple fights. Like, Dan Ige was a close-ass decision. I did maybe barely see that for Emmett. But Dan Ige certainly no title contender. And then Calvin Kattar, he squeaks by. And I'm not sure that was the right call. So it feels a little odd for Josh to be in this spot as well. But one of these guys is about to have a belt wrapped around their waist. So usually you kind of see more convincing runs into title fights than these. But that aside, these guys are both talented fighters for sure. And one of them is going to get a crack at Volk after Saturday. So huge opportunity for them. As I said, Yair will be taller in there, a bit longer. Josh has been the shorter fighter before, though, plenty of time, so he knows how to deal with that. We all know the power of Josh Emmett, and Yair is not a guy who doesn't get hit. Like, he's not one of these guys who's always so clean in there. He does get hit. A lot of times he plays the take one to give one game, which is not really something you want to be playing with Josh Emmett. But Yair does have a chin, though. And I just tend to think that he is too good and too dynamic of a striker to be put down by Josh Emmett. I mean, he's so dangerous on the feet that he turned Max Holloway into a wrestler, which no one does. So, and granted, Josh Emmett can wrestle. I think that could actually be a really interesting and smart wrinkle for him to introduce to this fight. So I wouldn't rule that out. But Yair has also improved his scrambling immensely ever since getting wrecked by Frankie Edgar some years back. And on the feet, Emmett is so good in the way that he closes distance and builds power by kind of like weaving his head low, almost leading with it so he can kind of close in and then he swings over the top. But I also think that kind of style puts his head out there for a guy who is precise enough and quick enough to take advantage of it. And I think Yair Rodriguez is that guy. I think that Emmett's head is out there. When he steps in and loads up, and I think strikes up the middle can take advantage of that. And against a guy who has every strike in the game, whether it's a lead elbow or a knee or a front kick or who knows what Yair Rodriguez, it'll be a backflip kick when coming from Yair Rodriguez. I just think with a guy who has that many weapons, that head is going to get hit. And I actually see a counter-jumping knee from Yair, so I'll get extra specific. And I'll say he does it in spectacular fashion. Round 3 knockout for Yair Rodriguez.
Wow. Okay, Omar, it's your turn. Give us your take, your thoughts on how this fight is going to go, and ultimately your pick.
Yair Rodriguez is my boy. That's just what it is. I was never going to pick against him. Could have been a logical pick. Could have been not. I was never going to pick against him. I am glad to say that if I am looking at this logically, I would probably still be picking for Yair Rodriguez. He is, like Mark said, a dynamic striker. The man comes from a lot of different angles. His movement is absolutely solid. He does take damage, but a lot of times for me, I feel like he takes the most damage when it comes to guys who are just as fast as him and or as dynamic as him. When it comes to guys who like to load up and guys who like to carry big power, I think he tends to read those guys a lot better, and I think he reacts a lot better as well. I think that he's one of these guys who will scrap, obviously, but I think he knows how to use his distance, and I think he uses his front head kick to kind of create that distance and maintain that distance as well. I'm excited to see what he's able to do here to Josh Emmett, because when we talk about the quality of the resume, we kind of fall back on the same argument here, where Yair has fought fucking everybody. I mean, Yair has a crazy ass resume for somebody who, you know, is as young as he is, but has been in the UFC since like his 7th or 8th fight. But he's fought Charles Rosa, Dan Hooker, Andre Fili, Alex Caceres, BJ Penn. And, you know, this was the tail end of BJ Penn, but like he lit BJ Penn up. Like, that was a wild ass fight.
I forgot that was even a thing until you just said that.
Yeah, he beat the shit out of BJ Penn. That might have been the last one for BJ. I can't remember, but
Yeah.
And then he ran into Frankie Edgar, and that's when he realized that wrestling was a different thing, and he needed to be on a different level when it came to the wrestling. And then he got into the war of the century with Chan Sung Jung, and then ended up landing that beautiful elbow at the buzzer. Got eye poked by Jeremy Stevens, or poked Jeremy Stevens. I don't remember who did what. But eventually came back to beat Jeremy Stevens. Like, there's so much quality, so much meat and potatoes behind this man's resume that it's hard for me to pick against not only the talent, but also the quality of the wins that he has, and even the quality of the losses. So I'm going to go with Yair Rodriguez confidently here and say he is winning this fight by unanimous decision. And new interim champion, another fucking stud from Mexico, Yair, the fucking Panther.
Woo!
Let's go.
Is that his nickname, the Panther?
La Pantera.
Pantera.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, I did know that. Yair poked him. I had to look back. I said it backwards. Anyway,
I can't remember who. I guess it was. I was just thinking to myself, I know somebody came in the second fight with fucking goggles on. Who was a huge ass person? And then I was like, of course it was Jeremy Stevens. Yeah.
Michael.
Man, this is a close fight, in my opinion. Emmett has such great power, man, for the weight class. Such great power, especially in this phase of his career. I mean, I've had 18 victories, only 6 have come by knockout, but it just seems like in this chapter of his career, he really has unlocked, some kind of.
It does feel like it should be more than that, huh?
Yeah, right. Yeah, because he can light dudes up,
Yeah,
man.
his
He
power's
can
crazy.
light dudes up like the fucking World's Fair. But then again, Yair has incredibly dynamic and powerful striking, especially in his kicks, man. And I just feel like there's something special about Rodriguez. I feel like Josh Emmett has really put together quite a nice resume as of late, but I just feel like there's something special about Rodriguez. So I'm going to go with him. I think he's going to edge it out. I think this is going to be another late Yair Rodriguez finish. I'll say he's going to get a knockout in round 4.
Nice.
And there you have it.
Omar, when did you say for yours?
I had him by decision.
Oh, decision.
I would love for him to finish Josh Emmett, but Josh Emmett is a tough bastard. So I'm not. And it's not like, Rodriguez lands a lot of opportunistic things, but I don't think he's going to overpower Josh Emmett. Totally possible he catches him some wild bullshit. But Josh Emmett is a tank of his own right. So I think it probably goes the full 5.
All right, man. Hey, man, main event time.
That's
History
fucking
will be
good.
made. The main event is Islam Makhachev putting his UFC lightweight title on the line against Alexander Volkanovski. So Makhachev, he is the 31-year-old out of Dagestan, Russia, 23-1 as a pro. He's on quite the win streak, most recently capturing UFC gold by defeating Charles Oliveira by arm triangle choke back in October. Volkanovski, the 34-year-old out of Australia, 25-1 as a pro, 12 knockouts, 3 subs. Also on a ridiculous win streak. He's undefeated in the UFC, 12-0. Most recently coming off of a UD over Max Holloway. His second win over Max. Second or third? Third.
Third, yeah.
That's right. Man, oh man. Omar, let's start with you this time. Give us your take and your pick of this Clash of Champions.
I think it's criminal how under promoted this fight specifically has been. Before we started recording, I sent a picture. I was on the UFC website, preparing, looking at rankings, whatever. When I got to the website, I might as well have typed in fucking powerslap.com because it was just all power slap. There's a little ticker at the bottom for the fight coming up with Islam and Volkanovski on it.
It's better now, thankfully. It's them everywhere. They heard you.
Well, it's fight week. They're doing the bare minimum as far as I'm concerned. They've got embedded, which I feel like is a given for pay-per-views at this point, so it's not like they're doing anything extra. And I think they should be. I can't, for the life of me, remember the last time we had a legit fight, not only of this magnitude, but of this caliber, right? Like, when I talked about it, I think the last time was GSP versus BJ Penn. And I can't really think of another time where we've had something this insane, where we've had arguments over who is the greatest, and then we have an opportunity to figure it out. I mean, I guess
maybe not quite. DC Bones,
Stipe at the time still didn't come with that kind of aura, right? Like, he had worked his way to get there, but like Islam has almost drifted through the shadow of Khabib and has kind of surpassed it at this point, or at least lived up to it at the very minimum, right? And so he's kind of walking around with this aura of invincibility. Volkanovski has absolutely battered everyone he's come into contact with for the last 5 years or whatever the hell it's been. And so he comes in with this aura, maybe not of invincibility, but of absolute brutality. And so GSP was the dominant guy, right? GSP was the guy that you couldn't beat because he was just better than you everywhere. And then you had BJ Penn at the time, who was the prodigy. He was just that good. You couldn't beat him. He was gonna, whatever it was, striking, ground game, he was gonna get you. And then that build up, the result was one thing. That was what it was. But the build up to it and the moment of it, it was, I think it was unique. I think it's something that doesn't come around very often. And I think what comes around even less is the actual moment to find out who is the best.
The promos, it's so funny you bring this up. The promos for that fight was what hooked me into my love of MMA. Like, I was already a fan. I already watched events. But the promos and the countdown for that fight is when I was like, this is my shit. Like, this is my life now. Like, because they did such a good job and they could be doing it here. So it's a great point.
I mean, just a little bit of effort. I mean, let's be real. I feel like everybody who is supposed to be doing the promo, he's got doing Power Slap. And so there is no one else to be doing the promos for this event coming up. I just think it's criminal. I think it's really fucked up. I think why would you do this for this pay-per-view? Why, if you did this for any other pay-per-view at this point, I'd almost be like, whatever, But I think it's crazy they're doing it for this one. So that's my rant on that.
I agree. Someone had to say it. Glad it was you, so I don't have to go through it.
Yeah. As far as the fight is concerned, I absolutely love this fight, man. I think these two guys are probably the definition of an immovable object and unstoppable force. In the unstoppable force being Islam Makhachev, and the immovable object very much being Alexander Volkanovski. I think we're going to see a litany of moments and exchanges that are going to define what the greatest of all time I think is really going to mean. And I think that's why we need a lot of these fights here, because we have two guys who I think have steadily proven themselves to be significantly better than most people in their division, if not everybody in their division. We can make the argument about Volkanovski and Max Holloway, how close the fights were, how close they are in talent. But the reality is Volkanovski, I think, is a level above Max Holloway, and not a lot of people are on Max Holloway's level at all. So I'm fully in love with what this fight really means, and what it brings to the table. The challenges that are presented for Alexander Volkanovski in the ground game, the ability for him to really show out potentially in his striking. I wonder how the size difference matches up, if it's something that plays into Volkanovski's into his game plan and potentially makes it an advantage that he's a lot smaller than Islam, or if Islam literally like big brothers him and just fucking ragdolls this kid all over the place, and we see something that we've never seen before in an Alexander Volkanovski fight. So I'm excited, man. This could really go either way. I'm going to piss off probably half of the audience that listens to us, and I'm going to go with Alexander Volkanovski by a hard-fought, unanimous decision. 3-2.
Mike, you're on mute.
I said the comments.
Yep.
They're happening right now. It's this. Feverishly. All right, Mark, take it.
All right, the odds are wide. I guess not terribly shocking, but they're wide. Islam is minus 380. Alexander Volkanovski is plus 300. Here we go. Number 1 pound for pound versus number 2 pound for pound. Volk trying to become double champ. I can't wait for this thing. Omar already touched on the promotion. I'll just say quickly, I wish it was more. It could have been so much more. This fight could have been an absolutely enormous deal, and for some reason it is not. But to me, it certainly is. To us and the listeners here, I'm sure as well. Obviously, the biggest narrative here is the size. Islam is 4 inches taller. He does give up an inch of reach to Volk, which is a bit wild. But beyond that, Islam is just the significantly larger human. And that size combined with the grappling that we know Islam has is why we're looking at an almost 4-1 favorite. It's just a bit hard to imagine Volk standing up to that grappling being the smaller guy, but it's not impossible. As plenty of people have pointed out over the last couple weeks, Volk is a hard guy to hold down. He's tight, he's compact, he's an unreal athlete, and his mentality is arguably like no one else in MMA. He just will not stop and will not accept a position. And that's what he has said over and over again, that, yeah, he may get taken down, but what happens when he can't keep me down? And I've loved every second of these Volk interviews. The guy's mentality is just fantastic. He really is making me believe he can do it, and he can do it. I just don't know if I can say that he will do it, because for him to pull this off, he's going to have to get up a bunch of times. Like, he may have to get up 4 or 5 times in the first couple rounds, or at least get up 2 and stuff 2 or 3, something like that. It's going to have to hit a point for me to envision Volk winning this fight. I think it's going to have to hit a point where we're 10 minutes in and Islam hasn't been able to make a ton of progress, where Volk keeps popping up and he's making Islam reset, and Volk still looks fresh. And, like, it's the end of round 2, and you see Volk bouncing there going, like, come on, mate, what else you got? Like, that's when we're going to see. If we get to that point, That's when we're going to learn about Islam Makhachev. Because as great as the Oliveira win was, Charles wasn't that type of test. With that fight, it was maybe Charles can finish Islam early. This is the fight where Islam gets to answer the questions of what does he do if he runs into someone who he can't keep down? How does he react if he's stuck in a straight striking battle? And more importantly, how does he look if he has to go late into a fight, if he can't get a guy out of there? And that's Volk's MO, the guy that you can't get out of there. So if we do get to that moment where we're 2 rounds in, and yeah, Islam's been winning, but Volk keeps popping up and he's kind of unfazed and he's waving Islam on, that's going to be a hell of a moment, and that's when you buckle up in this fight, in my opinion. And it's not impossible, but I can't get myself to pick it. I love Volk, man. I think he's absolutely earned being pound for pound number 1. I just can't imagine he is strong enough to deter Islam Makhachev, and the top pressure from these guys, Islam and Khabib, is just like nothing we've ever seen before. You can't move. The plan you thought you had changes, and it changes quickly because you realize how fucked you are underneath these guys. And I always make this point. Islam can strike too. It's not like he's some slouch there. Like, it was the hook that started the finish over Charles. So I can see this being competitive early. I can see Volk get up a couple times. But I think it hits a point where it just starts to feel like Islam is inevitable, kind of the way he always feels. My issue is that I don't know how to say it ends because my brain can't picture Volk being finished in any way. And if it goes 5, that means something went wrong for Islam. So if I'm picking Islam, I got to pick a finish. So I guess I'm going to say he finds a choke. I'll say Islam rear naked choke round 3, and that Volk doesn't tap. He goes out, and Islam is the new pound for pound number 1.
I will say there's one thing I trust about that fight is that Volk will not get gassed.
Oh, fuck no.
The training that the training that Dan seemingly goes through is absolutely fucking absurd. And even watching him at the tail end of these training sessions, he still has tons of energy to get through it. I don't know how this works. I don't know what he does. I don't know how. It has to be all mental by that stage. And I don't think, love Charles, but he's vulnerable there, right? I'm not going to say he's a bitch and all this other stuff that people get crazy about when it comes to Oliveira, but there are moments where he allows things to happen. Volkanovski doesn't do that shit. It doesn't matter how hard you hit him. It doesn't matter what position you put him in. Like, he's not going to allow or stay or accept the bad positions. Even the Ortega thing, right? Like, he got I don't know if he got caught or he got just tripped onto the ground. But when he got caught in that choke, that man there was no thought in his head of him tapping to that sequence. And he continued, and it wasn't even like he wasn't doing anything and just kind of scrambling and panicking. This man was doing everything he could to get out of there, fully conscious, fully aware of the danger he was in, and never stop fighting. I can't see a world for me where Volk gets outworked and out fought. Honestly, it's like I understand this is Islam. I understand what we've seen. I understand how he's essentially run through everybody that he's come up against. But to a certain extent, so has Volk. And again, we can talk about the Max Holloway fights. Volk didn't really take him down or do anything, have to worry about the ground game as far as that was concerned. But I just think he's so talented, man. And I don't think the ground... I want to believe that the ground is not going to be as terribly productive for Islam as it has been for literally every other guy Islam has fought.
Okay, so, man, you guys both gave such great and cogent points. Yeah, I can't bring myself to pick Volkanovski. I think Islam is going to be just too much for him. I think if Brian Ortega could get Volkanovski in 2 tight submissions I think if Islam gets him into that, the squeeze of Islam, as great as Ortega is, and as much of a submission sniper as he is, I think that the squeeze of Islam at 155, and he is a big 155er, I said it, is going to be a different feeling than the squeeze of Ortega. Does he get Volk out of there? I'm going to say I think he gets Volkanovski out of there by submission. I'll say round 3. He's going to catch him. I think he's going to have a hard time in round 1. Round 2, Volk might have a little bit of a comeback round, maybe escape some takedowns, and then round 3, Islam's going to do what he does, and Volkanovski's going to be shaking his head because Islam is too good, and Islam is going to be too big. And with that, let the comments flood our clip here.
They should be proud of us. 2 of us picked their boy.
That's right.
I'm rolling with the Volk. That's right.
Yeah.
Honestly, man, this is it's such a good fight.
If it really does hit a moment where we realize, like, oh, fuck, it's not working for Islam, like, look at this boy Volk, it's going to be the tension of, like, feeling like, holy shit, Volk can actually win this is going to be crazy.
I mean, if he doesn't get run through in round 1, I mean, I feel like half the battle is over at that point.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if he can not necessarily survive, right, but if he can be competitive in round 1, if he can not get ragdoll in round 1, if he shows shades of the greatness that is Volk, I don't see this being a gimme for Islam.
Oh, it ain't a gimme. Nothing's a gimme when you're fighting fucking best fighter in the world.
No, according to the fucking
all right,
the line, one would disagree.